It was so hot up in that church, man. I was so distracted. I couldn't even listen to the word, man. I was fanning myself, man. Bro, it was crazy.
It's
Sitting
that type
over there
of
like,
heat. It's that type of heat that lets you know what? I'm so glad I'm saved because hell is supposed to be hotter than this. I'm not doing it.
And bro, like it's one of those things, man.
that is a good Sunday to talk about Revelation.
Yes. All right. So, with that, hello. Hi there. This is the podcast called The Gospel Disciples. I am Benjamin Isaiah Black. With me, well, I guess I'll let you guys introduce yourselves.
All right, hey, what's up? I'm Brian Black.
Emmanuel Black.
Gabriel Black.
All right. Brian, Gabriel, and I are brothers. Emmanuel is our cousin. And we have and there are more of us, more to each of our families, more siblings and cousins. But we've grown up together. We've grown up together as family. We've grown up together in the church. And so we share a love for a lot of things, most of which, or rather, I guess some of which are in the church, are in the gospel, in the faith of Jesus Christ. And so whenever we get together, we often talk about those things, love talking about those things, especially when it comes to gospel music. And so this is a podcast where we get to kind of share our love for gospel music as well as other things that church kids growing up in the 90s and the 2000s are accustomed to and are used to, but especially gospel music. So this is a podcast where we just go in depth in regards to our knowledge, our love, our appreciation for gospel, and get to talk about all of those things. This first episode that we're going to be focused on, we're asking the question: who is on your personal Mount Rushmore of gospel music? Who are they, and why would you say that? So, you know what, Gabriel, I'm gonna start with you. Who is on your Mount Rushmore for gospel?
Truly hoping you started with anybody else. But all right, this is off the top. Kirk Franklin has to be, to me, gotta be there.
Hmm.
Kirk Franklin has to be on the list. Probably my number one. Um, and then after that, probably no particular order. Um, I'm gonna go Richard Smallwood. All of his orchestral work and bringing
Hmm.
like that style in the gospel music,
Yep.
I think it's fair to put maybe like a Maddie Moss on there, Maddie Moss Clark in there. Not just for the work that she did with her daughters, but also like kind of in her own lane, like revolutionizing, like because didn't she like help produce like the modernized 3-part harmony as we know it, or
Yeah,
something
she
like
yeah,
that?
she played a role in that for gospel choir writing. Yeah.
Personally, I'm gonna throw Fred on there. Fred is one of the coldest. Like, he also brought like an R&B flavor to gospel music and all of that. Also, This Is the Day was like a banger if you were around in 2008.
A banger.
Oh yeah.
If
Like
your church wasn't doing it, you weren't nobody.
like your church was only singing hymns. Like we could distinguish who you are.
And
But yeah, but
honestly, we
also
just the
back.
goat of groups, man.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Used to go to groups.
And that whole
Yeah,
era
legit.
helped like kind of revolutionize like praise team
Hmm.
gospel. So like that was like a small switch from like traditional choir and the praise team. And so like some people, of course everybody misses choir music to an extent, but it also was revolutionary in its own right. I think that's my Mount Rushmore. I
Okay.
might replace some of that. I might have some amendments later on, but that's what I'm gonna start with.
I'll say this just in regards to a couple of the things that you just mentioned. Um, that as far as Richard Smallwood, there are some others that I'll touch on later, and for obvious reasons as you'll see. But as far as Richard Smallwood goes, I do love his really really unique blend of gospel and I don't know what you'd call it. I guess I'll call it maybe it is. Maybe I'm just using this for lack of a better phrase, but classical music as well. Um, just the you're right as far as the orchestral sound, as far as the blending of the voices of the choirs. It is a very unique sound. It is a very very unique sound. To be able to blend those styles of music so well to the point that it's almost as if, and I'm not as deep into Richard Smallwood's library of music as I am with others. So I don't know if this is his. I can imagine that this is part of this is because of his training. I don't know if this is sort of his unspoken thesis of his body of work or not, but it feels as though that unspoken thesis is these music styles, these two different music styles should go well together. They do complement each other very well. I'm going to showcase it and show you why. And they do work so well together that I'm actually surprised that not too many other groups do it. Not too many other artists do it. Manny, what about you? Who's on your Mount Rushmore?
Uh, so my it's very complex. It's kind of like all over the place. But my number one is Kirk because he's just the goat of gospel right now
Mm-hmm.
and will forever be. Um, I will say I do have Fred on my list. Um, and because you know, uh, I'm gonna say Tone B Slade.
Hey.
Another
B
reason why
Slade.
because he has brought something to gospel music that nobody hasn't heard ever. You know, um, in that type of arena. So I gotta give him um his props. Uh, and Donald Lawrence.
Ooh,
Mm-hmm.
nice.
And so
That's a solid
yeah.
pick.
Yeah.
That is a solid pick.
I'm gonna
I'm
say
wondering about Tone, but it's still a solid pick.
The reason I picked Tony because like honestly, um, if you really study his music, even back then, it was very complex, man. Like you didn't hear that in gospel,
yeah.
and you still don't, honestly. Like if he was to come back, and do a gospel album, it'll be different, still,
The world
Mm-hmm.
ain't ready
you
for that. That's like
right,
that would be crazy. Tone in 2023.
Mm.
right.
Yeah,
The
I
only
do wonder
reason,
sometimes. Yeah.
the only
He's
reason why
he's
I
still
was like was I think Tone probably is like top three gospel talents we've ever seen. But his
mm,
career was so short. Like if he kept making music even today, I think there's like no question.
Yeah, that's what I often wonder. Like if he had like, because really his like gospel era, I'll say, was like the crossover from like the late '90s into the 2000s, and from up to about maybe I don't know 2008, 2010, somewhere around there. Like I often wondered, to your point, like if that had like expanded into the present, like would we? I feel like we would still keep seeing some of his innovations like growing into some different territory, and then we'd see more people like the Mike Juniors and them now would still be trying to like spin off of stuff in his sound,
Hmm.
like trying to catch up, basically.
like the way his mind works musically. There isn't. I don't think there's a genre of music he can't do. Really,
That's
I think
facts.
there are a few that we haven't heard from him, and quite frankly, I'm okay with that. I would be interested in seeing what he did with something like country music, but I also don't need that in my life. Um, but all of the other genres that he has touched, jazz, funk, R&B, hip hop, pop, traditional gospel, contemporary gospel, blues, all of these. What's that, Gabriel? Gabriel, something's happening with your audio. I can't hear you, and you're not
This
muted.
man can yodel. Hello.
There we go. There we go.
Got
Yeah.
it.
Oh, okay. I
What
was
were you
saying this man can yodel,
saying?
Oh yeah, I forgot about his yodel friend.
and he made it cold in gospel.
And did
Man,
nobody say a word about it?
like when he was doing that, especially when he was with John P. in what 2014. I was like, you
Yeah, that was fine.
And that's the thing too. He is still
still
making
cold.
music. It's just not on on the platform that he as big of a platform that he had back in the 2000s. He contributed when Snoop Dogg made his gospel album
That was a
in
good album too.
2018, 5 years ago. Yeah,
Mhm.
he wrote and produced five of the songs on that. One of which, "Words Are Few." Again, me personally, that's one of my favorite songs of all time.
If he would have stayed in gospel music, you know, you think he would have surpassed Kurt Franklin?
Oh,
Hmm.
oh
I don't know
God.
about surpassed, but I think we would be talking about him right now the way we talk about, like I said earlier, Pastor Mike Jr., the Mav City crew, and all of it. Like I think we would be talking about him as much as them. We'd probably be seeing more Kirk and Tone collabs, like
Mhm.
with Since Jesus Came. Like we'd probably see a couple more things like that. Like I think had he stayed in gospel, he would like people would keep him like really present on the scene.
I think very similar. Like Kirk is really hard to like usurp, but
Yeah.
I think in the same way, like Tone was so unique that I was even sitting here trying to compare like verses or like who is he more
Mhm.
similar to or something like that.
Mhm.
Tone was in a league of his own. Tone
Yeah.
could literally do whatever he wanted, however he wanted, and he was such an individual that like man, like I think at some point he probably would have like broken out of the box of gospel. He would have came out the box.
Ha ha
Okay.
ha 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 ha. I
All
said
right.
It was a
It was right there. Just had to
did you
take
see
it
what I
up.
did there? Did you
I
see?
see.
Did you see that?
Set him at the box.
I think that just like in any other field, in any other discipline, any other career, like say for example in basketball, um, anytime since the 90s, anytime a not just good, not just great, not even excellent, but a phenomenal basketball player came about. Whether it was Kobe Bryant, whether it was LeBron James or anybody else, they would always get compared to Michael Jordan. Who is better, Michael or LeBron? Michael or Kobe? I think that the same would probably have been said for these two. Who do you think who would battle it out, Kirk or Tone? And and I also say that understanding that these amazing people in these careers, I'm sure some of them may not mind it. Others probably do mind it. I can only imagine that based on what we know of them as people, I can only imagine that they would say, okay, I don't really want to be compared to this person, and also, God gave both of us music. I can't say that I can't say that the music God gave me is better than than the music that God gave to that person as well. But for the sake of these kind of discussions, which are fun to have, I do think that if Tone had stayed in that world, in that arena, that I do think that there would be some conversation about it. I do think that there would be some discussions about it.
People always gravitate towards who's the new young talent, like who's the young
Yes.
personality in anything. Like looking at gospel, like again, I'm trying to not like do this under the lens of comparison as much, but like to what I think Gabriel said a minute ago, like Ty Trippett came up around the time when Tone was like really like on the scene, right? Like in the mid 2000s, like those two were like, these big like new like personalities, like the people from the 90s that had become well established from like 80s and 90s in between, the Andre Crouches, the Fred Hammonds, the James Halls, and then the Kirk Franklins, right? The Yolanda Adams, so on and so forth. Like by the mid 2000s, they were like well established. They were very present. We get to this time, like Tone is a new, like bright young personality. Ty Tribbett comes up, new bright young personality.
Mary.
Had Tone, yeah, Mary, yeah, exactly. And so that was, and like the sound of gospel had taken a turn for more like, more like urban influences because that was, the sounds of like R&B and hip hop and rap were very popular. So like that, you add that on top of like how like vibrant their personalities were, like that was captivating. Just like the people that we talk about now are how it feels fresh. People are always going towards what's the new fresh thing. And but the thing that I think, to Manny's point about Tone, that allowed him to kind of stand out was the infusion of a variety of sounds. It was still based in his, I think, it felt like it was based in his like roots and upbringing in gospel, but he had more of a sonic variety to pull from than most other people. Like most of the people, like they would add in, the infusion of jazz or the infusion of classical, the infusion of hip hop, or the fusion of more of a praise and worship, like intimate contemporary kind of sound. Like, one other thing. Tone was one kind of rare example of someone who like had more of a color palette to pull from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, he had a whole he had a whole resurrection song that was a rock song. Like a
Yes.
headbanger, hair turning rock song. If y'all remember Alive,
Alive. Yep. Alive.
off
Yeah.
the box,
Metal.
out the box.
Yeah.
That was
Which,
crazy.
which is funny. It's a metal rock song, but it also takes sample of an R&B boy band song from the 70s. Da 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 da.
And
Yeah, man, that one where he throws in the Family Feud theme. I'm like, what? Like, I don't know why,
Oh
but
gosh, yeah.
but it got your attention.
he had Shirley Caesar rapping.
He did. My
He
goodness.
did.
We can't
I want to
forget
know what
that.
that conversation was like when he came to her and said, "Hey,
Hey, so I got this hot 16 for you. I just wrote out. Go ahead and try this real quick.
And what's crazy, you look at the when you get the CD, you look at the booklet with all of the lyrics in it, and you get to the back, and it says all of the thanks that Shirley Caesar wanted to give. I wanted to thank this person, and she said in there, I want to thank Tone for teaching me how to rap. So you can only imagine what the sessions were like in going through this song.
I imagine a lot of
Like, this
prayer
is
and
how you have to do
supplication."
it. This is how you have to do it. You have to keep in beat. These are the words you have to say, and you have this amount of time to do it. This is how it sounds. I need you to
Come on
listen
now.
to this over and over
Stomp
again.
on the devil, take him to another level.
Goodness. He also co-wrote and produced and co-sang one of my favorite TV show theme songs of all time. One on the theme song for One on One goes
That's
on.
good.
It's good.
Giving Flex
That was
Alexander his best.
that was a good one.
Brian, who is on your Mount Rushmore of gospel music?
All right. Well, full transparency, I struggled to narrow this down, as I'm sure y'all probably did too.
Oh yes.
And then I had to remind myself that Mount Rushmore is 4 and not like 6. So since I'm in the middle of I've been doing a lot of research and study on gospel music because I'm using gospel to as my research topic for my dissertation. So that's kind of totally reframed how I've always viewed gospel music and the development of the genre over the last century and the artists that have contributed to it in a
So
lot of really
before you go any
ways.
further with that, let's not gloss over the fact, just for those who are watching and listening who don't know, that you're currently in grad school right now pursuing your doctorate, which you'll have next year, and your dissertation
Yes.
is in. Up to this point, you have been studying music as a singer, an arranger, a conductor, and so now you'll be getting your doctorate. and that your dissertation is in gospel music. I just didn't want that to be a small footnote that we glossed over. So with that, Dr. Brian Black II, please continue.
Yeah, man. So that's, I mean, all of that, the aforementioned is just like shapes like how, like, you know, just how I view it and how I look at what really qualifies gospel and kind of what kind of regrounded me and what the point of all that is. So my thoughts are like, number one, looking at these, a century of different artists, like number one, how did they contribute to the development and the sound of gospel music? Like the full history of, you know, where the music came from, what the aesthetic of the sound is, like, because a lot of gospel music, like for me, it's a merger of like ministering the gospel, like the word of God, the text, you know, the message of God of salvation, and then the music aesthetics of gospel. You know, Black gospel traditionally, that comes from all these traditions that, you know, that are aesthetics of Black music and things that came, you know, some of it that came over from Africa with us, as far as our approach to rhythm, our aesthetic in African American Black church worship. You know, before we even get into like denominational divides and or geographical or regional preferences and all of that, like that's kind of the root of where it starts, right? So how did people contribute to the development, the sound of gospel? Number one. Number two, how did they innovate gospel in new ways? Like we kind of like how we talked about how, you know, Tone innovated sound in a different, unique way. Like who are people who just like brought something new and unique to it that changed the landscape of gospel and brought something creative to it? And then number three, how did they minister the gospel? Period. Straight, flat out. Like how do they minister the word in a meaningful way? So that being said, I number one have to throw it up to Dr. Maddie Moss Clark, partially for her like repertoire in gospel music, like "Let Everything That Hath Breath Praise Lord," the Psalm 150 that has been known for Twinkie Clark's album. Like people love that. It's a banger. It's a staple. Like everyone does it. She arranged that song in the mid 20th century, but like that's just like one example of a hallmark where like she and her work in the Kojic Church and going through the GMWA conventions, and like she and James Cleveland together as a soft throw up to him too. Like they did a lot of legwork on making gospel music, the gospel choir, the development of choral writing in gospel. Like they made the language possible for what a lot of that stuff is. Like she was a prolific writer. She wrote like song after song after song after song. You know, we know the fruit of what came from her daughters, the Clark sisters, and things like that, where that's in the legacy that has developed. But also, I mean, I think that her I think that a lot of what she started like just really paved the way for the pedestal, not the pedestal, but for the foundation that women in gospel have been able to have because of a lot of work that she did. My number two, without any question, is John P. Key. He did a lot of the gospel artists that we know who like utilized secular music influences. Like I really see him as like a pivotal point of like really making that like more pervasive and more possible for other people to kind of spin off of. And that was a method in which, you know, it was kind of a sly way to minister the gospel. Like there's like literally like centuries of worship music dating all the way back to like even the Renaissance. There were people pulling from secular influences in the church and church people like hating it and saying, "Oh, this has no place in the church walls." And so it's not like he's the first one to do that, but in the modern era of using, you know, uh, hip hop and R&B and like literally quoting Bad Mama Jamma in the middle of like clap your hands or something like that, and just having people bop out to it. Richard Smallwood also, for similar reasons, like him and his colleagues, the music education that they got at Howard paved the way for the infusion of classical and symphonic music to, I think the point Gabriel made earlier. So like we all know Total Praise, but then even his like, if you study the intricacies of some of the songs that he has, like I Will Sing Praises, Anthem of Praise, even Hebrews 11, like a lot of that stuff, it's not just that it's adding classical influences, it's expanding the harmonic and tonal languages that people added in gospel. You know, like it's adding like all these extra things that the voices can do, because it's adding in the elements of another tradition. But he does so in a way with his writing to where like it doesn't take away from the foundation of gospel. Like you're not listening to anthem of praise and going like, okay, that's Baroque music, that's old, that's antiquated. I want to like it's still gospel at its core. It's still ministering the word. It's still using what you would hear in a symphonic piece and just adding to it. And I think what he did is unique and important because it was in the, I think he was in school in the, I want to say 60s or 70s at a time when they weren't even they were not encouraging students, number one, to study gospel music in school formally, and number two, in the world, like Black people were like just starting to be allowed to get a more expansive education in college. Mm-hmm. And so then the more exposure they got to other things, the more they were able to do that, the more they were able to merge it with gospel music, the more it became part of the scene in Baltimore and then beyond. So anyway, so that makes what he did really notable. And now tons of people have gone on to add and to contribute to it. And then for my fourth spot, I struggled like big time. And I'm sure I'll change my mind again 20 other times later. But I'm going to throw my fourth spot up to Fred Hammond. Fred's stuff is, you know, it's accessible for praise and worship music. It's not necessarily choral stuff. Like you can if you want, but it fits that kind of more intimate, just a small group of people on a mic kind of situation. You know, it's a little more approachable. It's a little more accessible. Like it, you know, it's not music that you have to concentrate on as much, and so that accessibility leads itself more towards you know, you feeling like it's approachable for you, like whether you're a musician in a church singing or playing it, or if you're just feeling like a regular person out in the pews and you just want to sing it, like you can do it. It works any day of the week. You can, you know, walk around your house, pleading the blood and just pull out, Lord, Jesus be a fence all around me and move on with your day. You know what I mean? So, I mean, these were like, if you were a Black mom coming up in the 90s, you were playing some Fred Hammond on loop and getting your house together. You know, so I could negotiate these spots all day, but that's my four. Dr. Matty Moss Clark, Fred, John P. Key, and Richard Smallwood.
Very intrigued on hearing who your honorable mentions are.
My honorable mentions are Donald Lawrence, James Hall, for similar infusion reasons of him putting jazz in his music, like, you know, that just expanded the possibilities. And then Kirk, of course. Like I know, like it feels controversial to not say Kirk's like immediately in my top four. I honestly like prioritize John P. Key because I feel like John P. Key like walked so that some of the things that Kirk did so that like he could run.
I'll say this about James Hall. I think that you can apply that to a few of the artists. I don't know about I myself would argue, maybe not all, but definitely a few of the artists that we touched upon earlier, like Tone, for example. James Hall is one of those artists where if you know enough about his music, but you don't know, again, you don't know everything about his library of music, you don't know that deep into it like you may know other artists. He's somebody who, when one of his songs come on, you always think to yourself, I don't know what song this is, but I know it's a James Hall song. And I really enjoy that. I really look forward to that in an artist.
Hey, Benjamin, can I ask a question?
Yes.
If we had to recommend, like if we were introducing our Mount Rushmore artists to people, and we had to recommend just one song from each person and say, hey, this represents their work, you know, like what those would be.
Ooh, that's a good question. It's also
like you just had to narrow it down to one, like, hey, this is the Kirk song you want to listen to, or whatever.
Ooh, that's so hard. That's
incredibly hard.
That is a great question, and it is also a very difficult. I feel like it's almost unfair of a question to ask, but we will. Let me go ahead and share. Let me go ahead and share my Mount Rushmore, and then we'll ask that. Number one, Kirk Franklin. For I think for obvious reasons. Not only is he my favorite gospel artist of all time, he's also my favorite artist of all time, period. Any genre of music, any time in music, I put him up against me personally, I put him up against every other artist. And all of his songs, all of his albums, I don't know what it is about his music, but there's something to it where anytime he releases a new album, it immediately becomes my favorite album of all time. Um, I think that as time goes by and things and I listen to the album more and more, I think that there are sometimes where that definitely holds up. There are sometimes where it may not. But even even the worst Kirk Franklin album is still a good album. And there are still songs that you can take and choose and say, this song was amazing. And I'm so glad I need this song in my life. Like maybe some of these other songs I could take or I could leave, whatever. But this song, but with every Kirk Franklin album, there are going to be songs that you're gonna say, I needed this song in my life. So I don't know what else I can add on to that. Kirk is number one. Number two is Fred Hammond. Um, not just because of his amazing songs, his amazing body of work as a solo artist, with Commission, with Radical for Christ, but
Mm-hmm.
also because in my learning about Fred Hammond, that he really revolutionized praise and worship in the Black church. That prior to him, there wasn't really much of that. It was happening in a lot of white churches, but not so much in the Black church. I remember a few years ago, like you were saying earlier, Brian, that our parents would have Fred Hammond albums on repeat, on loop, oftentimes. And I remember a few years ago, just driving in my car, just listening to Fred Hammond music, and each time a song would come up, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I forgot about this song from long ago. And now that I'm an adult and I've gone through some things between my childhood and now, this is
Hey, it hits different.
in a whole new way.
It's
Which
crazy
you can
different.
say the same thing about Kirk's music. You can say the same thing about Hezekiah Walker's music and John P. Key and Yolanda Adams, Donnie McClurkin, all of these incredible artists, which shows how timeless this music is, which is another conversation that we'll be having later on. But Fred's music, I would argue that Kirk and Fred's music really showed me not just the fact that that gospel music is timeless, but also the importance of the music being timeless. So Fred is very high on the list. He's also one of my favorite artists of all times. Number three is Andre Crouch. Andre Crouch is also somebody who, whenever a song of his comes on, I may not know who it is, I may not know what it is, but it always immediately captures me. I'm like, what is this? I hear it and I'm going, this song sounds great. What is this? I look at it, I'm like, Andre, Andre, you did it again. He's got so many hits. Um, I've got confidence. Take me back. Jesus is the answer. The tribute, my tribute. Gosh, I love even the album that came out when we were kids, the Pray album. His song "Lord, I Thank You." That, in my opinion,
Hey,
is
that's
the
another
number
one.
one. If you don't, if your day is not started with that song,
Then
I
you
can
need to
listen to
start
that song at
over.
the beginning of my day, and my day is immediately set. I'm like, I don't care what comes, I'm good. Lord, I thank you for the morning.
That was
It,
another one. Your church wasn't nobody if you weren't trying that one.
bro, that song and that entire album goes. I love that entire album. I don't even know how to put it. I don't know the words for it. His music is just something that is it's captivating. It is captivating. Even if you don't know his name, you have to know his music.
Mm-hmm.
And he's great again, continuing on with the pattern that we've seen with the Tonays and the Kirk Franklins and so on and so forth. He's also branched out and not only has he brought the worldly sound of music into gospel, but he's also brought the gospel sound of music into the world, contributed theme for the TV show Amen. He was one of the conductors, one of the vocal music, one of the choir conductors for The Lion King, 1994, the original animated film. And he wrote God's Trying to Tell You Something for the Color Purple movie. So he's definitely left his impact. He's definitely made not only made for a name for himself, but also more importantly has contributed to the spreading of the gospel. And then number 4, like I said, I struggled with it for a while. I thought about Tone, but then I was like, on Mount Rushmore, maybe my personal list, yes, but Mount Rushmore, I don't know. I thought about Donald Lawrence. I thought about I'm not as deep into Hezekiah Walker's music or John P. Key's music, so it wouldn't have been fair for me to say that. Number 4, I'm not as deep into this one either, but I think that given this artist's contribution, I don't think any of these artists that we've talked about would have, again, going back to your analogy, Brian, I don't think any of them would have walked or ran if it hadn't been for this artist. My number 4 is going way, 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 way back. It is Thomas A. Dorsey. Because he did the same thing, but at an earlier time of music where it would have been more difficult for gospel, where it would have been difficult for a Black artist to try to make any sort of contributions to music. But he did what he was able to do by combining blues music with the gospel sound, was absolutely outstanding, to the point where so many of his songs now are considered spirituals and hymns and standard songs, like the most famous Take My Hand, Precious Lord, and all of the different arrangements that we've heard of that. But he's the one who's,
that was the start of a lot of things.
yeah, yeah, yeah. So again, I don't have a lot to say about that, just because I admit my information, my knowledge of Thomas A. Dorsey, excuse me, is limited. But I think that, but I do know that if it had not been for him, we wouldn't have gotten any of these other artists. We wouldn't have gotten James Cleveland. We wouldn't have gotten any of the Clarks or the Hawkins or the Winans or anybody else from any other time period. From that point in which he came up, from the 20s up until now, the 2020s, 100 years later. So that's my Mount Rushmore: Kirk Franklin, Fred Hammond, Andre Crouch, Thomas A. Dorsey.
Yeah, if you look up Dorsey's salvation story, his musical influences, and why he incorporated the jazz sounds and such that he did at the time, and even his work in music in the industry, like in publishing, for getting Black people's music like written down and published and sold, like you would see the foundation of a lot of what our people now stand on.
So that's our Mount Rushmore. I find it interesting that it's interesting comparing. There are definitely a lot of crossovers. I'm I'm both shocked but not shocked at the same time that Fred Hammond made it on all of our Mount Rushmores. That's the one consistent throughout the board.
I listen to the Pages of Life every Friday.
Could have been Kirk if it wasn't for somebody.
Ooh, I knew I was going to come in. As soon as Manny said Kirk Franklin first, I was like, yeah, I'm about to be in some trouble.
No, but that's still variety.
It's good. And nothing wrong with that variety. So if you were to ask,
yeah, this wouldn't have been that interesting if we all said the same people.
You're right.
Right.
No. And I think it says something. It says something about not only us and our appreciation and love for not just gospel music, of course that's what we're talking about, but also music as a whole. Just the artistry, the sound, the blend, the making of music. It not only does that say something about our taste in music, but it also says something about the complexity of gospel music as well, which I don't think a lot of people take into the fact that gospel music is complex. Just like any other genre of music, R&B, rap, hip hop, pop, rock, All of these genres of music. There are subgenres, there are complexities, there is a musicality, there is artistry to it. There's an understanding of it. I think gospel is one of those genres that very, very often and shamefully, and I'll even say no pun intended, but sinfully so, get swept under the radar, I think. Because people expect it to just be this one thing, and it's not. Gospel can be and is so many things. The one thing that I'll say about gospel, and again, I'm sure that this may be something that we talk about later on, is that the only thing, in my opinion, if you if the spirit of God is not in the mix of it, if the gospel of Jesus Christ is not there and is unrecognizable, then it is not gospel and something is wrong.
Think about how creative God is, and think about how, you know, how creative and how much variety you'll see in the people, and even how much creativity, diversity you're going to see in heaven. Mm-hmm. And then you look at gospel, like we've talked about artists that span literally the last about 100 years of gospel, as long as this genre has developed over the course of literally the past century. Since, I mean, Dorsey was on the scene in the late 20s, early 1930s. So, and as the times have progressed, gospel music has, the best of it. The people we've talked about, they have allowed the times to move and progress along with it. So I think that, like, to your point, like, yeah, that's where this has been the most interesting, in that it represents the creativity of God and the spread of what all we'll see in heaven by not being confined to one thing. It has its roots, like I said earlier, in the foundation of what gospel looks and sounds like. But the best parts have been those that have, allowed it to be innovative in different creative ways that I think spread the gospel in these creative measures of sound and the outlook and things of that with it too.
Yeah.
I think even of that, the whole point of it is to kind of follows the Great Commission, right? Go into the world and create disciples. This is just all of their lanes. They have a specific gift in making music, and this is their lane of going into the world. So you're naturally going to find, and even as we're like, what we're seeing closer today, like BK said, this spans over the last century. But what we're finding even more recently is how, or what we're seeing in real time now, is how people are taking the word and going into the world to deliver the message, to deliver the good news, to deliver the gospel. So it's really just cool to see the variety of sounds to get to a variety of people, and how that the sound or the packaging of the message is always going to be updating, but the message doesn't. But we can't be surprised at when the packaging or the sound changes. Is to go into the world. Again, John P. Key was doing some minor secular stuff. Andre Crouch was doing secular stuff. Kirk Franklin took a whole bunch of people's stuff and slapped Jesus on it, and it flew, like like we said earlier, flew in the clubs. Yeah. To go into the world, hearing a bunch of college kids screaming melodies from heaven. Like, think about that impact that this thing has gone into the world to do its job of spreading the message. So that's what I like about all of this the most.
I want to say this, and then I do kind of want to throw it back to Brian's question earlier. Looking at the artists that we said that we would pick on our Mount Rushmore, if we kind of combine that, if we compare everything and say who, but among us four who would be on Mount Rushmore, it looks like those that would make it would be Fred Hammond, Kirk Franklin, Richard Smallwood, and Dr. Mattie Moss Clark.
Hey, that's a good list. If I had to introduce people to gospel, like, I mean, that's a premier start if you ask me.
That was my list. That was my complete list.
Oh my God. Look at you paving the way for us, Gabriel.
I didn't even realize that's absolutely what you said. Oh,
So it looks like I have the best taste of all. So listen to me more, guys.
so
Well, sponsors, you heard it here first.
However,
so,
with that, with the greatest taste of them all, I think I got to sign off real quick, guys.
do you? Okay, okay.
Yeah. But I'm gonna
Well,
see y'all later.
you go ahead. I'm gonna ask Brandon and Manny this last question, but you go ahead. We'll see you later. You have a great day. Love
Y'all
you.
do the same.
Bless you.
Peace.
Love you, man.
Manny, what would you say if you had to introduce somebody to Fred Hammond, Kirk Franklin, Richard Smallwood, and Dr. Matty Moss Clark? Which song of theirs would you say start with this one?
I will go back to Hello Fear. That Hello Fear album. Smile.
Ah,
I feel like if I was, introducing somebody to Kurt, I would play that song.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that speaks to everybody. I think it can speak to everybody. But yeah, I would pick that. And you said Fred,
mhm.
and it's not even his song, but I probably would go with This Is the Day because that pretty much that's his sound, when it comes to his music. Like that song alone really speaks to all the albums that he put out, you know. And what was the third?
Well, there are two more: Richard Smallwood and Dr. Matty Moss Clark.
I want to be different because I don't want to say
You try not to say total praise because that's the
I don't
go-to.
want to say total. Yeah, that's the go-to. I don't want to say total praise. I would probably um just Smallwood. I would probably go with Trust Me. I feel
Oh
like that's a great.
yeah, yeah,
I feel
man.
like that's a great song.
Yes,
Um,
yeah, man.
and then Matty Moss. Probably expect your miracle.
Okay.
Hmm. Now wait a second. Do I know that one? I'm over here looking at my playlist. Like, wait a second. Let me make sure I'm not missing some music here.
Yeah, I'm looking for a miracle because we did that back at Greater. So
Mhm.
and it went over every single time.
Brian, what about you? What song would you take of these artists and introduce them and say, start with this one?
All right, for Fred Hammond, specifically off the Page of the Life album, I think it's the last track, We're Blessed slash Shout
Yes.
Unto God. Specifically, you got to hear the one where he has a lady come out and read Acts chapter 15 and 17
Yeah.
and go through the whole verse, and then she gets him all riled up. He comes behind very, like real chill at first, and then does this for those of you who go to the nice church, and then hollers "Light in the midnight." That would, I mean, that turned. I've watched that turn many a church house like upside down for
Yes.
hours. You gotta start. I mean, that's as Fred gets.
Yeah.
You can start right there. So that's my Fred representation for Richard Smallwood. I'm gonna also say "Trust Me." His story behind writing that song, dealing through depression and some other things. Like, if that don't mean it's to you, like whoever you are, wherever you are, I don't know what will. With an honorable mention to "I Will Sing Praises" off of
Mm.
the, I think, Adoration album. There's a great video online of Jason Max Ferdinand conducting the Aeolians with that, and they just every modulate. That song's also great for teaching like how black choir like modulations work. Maddie Moss, I'm gonna again bring up "Let Everything That Has Breath," song 150, and I want to shout out also. There's a musician by the name of Carolyn T. Brewer. She was a sophomore in college at the time at FAMU at the time when Twinkie Clark was recording that album where that song is well known from. She was the one that like wrote much of the piano part and like some of those interludes in the middle where it sounds very much like Baroque era writing. She did that, and I interviewed and spoke with her recently as a part of my studies and got to hear all about the process behind that. And then for Kirk, um, too many things come to mind. I'm gonna say go to the Rebirth album. Really, anything off of that would do the job. But I'm gonna choose to say Brighter Day just because it's like standard Kirk, right in the center of his bag, the center of his sound, the center of his ministry. Like when he's giving you like when he's ministering and giving you encouragement about hope in the midst of anything, like that's where he really shines. When he's hyping you up, that's his thing. And when he's um, giving you like the intricacies that were kind of stand out and different from other gospel artists of different layering parts at different points, and not just the regular inversions. You know that that's Kirk Franklin all day.
Yes. Nice. For me, Fred Hammond. This is very hard. And I'll probably change this later. But for right now, no, I'm gonna say My Praise Belongs to You. It's so cool, it's so smooth, it's so funky, and it's one of those things where I really appreciate it when gospel is and should be accessible to everybody. But Brian, like what you were saying about how it combines the message and the gospel of Jesus Christ with music that was birthed from us as Black people. I love it when a gospel song, when I play it and I'm like, okay, this is unapologetically Black.
Yeah, man.
My Praise Belongs to You. That's one. There are others that I would say, but I'm gonna sit on that one for now. Kirk Franklin, likewise, there are others that I would probably say, but today I'm gonna say something that I think would hit and reach anybody and everybody is from 1998, the New Nation Project, Lean on Me.
New Nation all
Yes.
day.
Yes, yes. In my humble opinion, and Gabriel and I have spoken about this before, so I know that he feels the same way as well. In our humble opinion, New Nation is his best album. I think that's debatable depending on who you're talking to. Like Brian, I know that for you it's Rebirth. Manny, I think you said it's Rebirth for you too, didn't you? Yeah. Which I definitely see. I think that those are among his top three albums. The third one also being God's Property. So, however you want to arrange those, then that's fine. For me, I think his best one of all of those is New Nation, and Lean on Me is something that I think can hit anybody. I think start them off here, and then say from here start this rabbit hole, and you'll find other things about other sides of Kirk Franklin musically, um, as well as just the continuation of the gospel, the message of the gospel. But it's really good. It's really good. And I think that anybody can hear that and be like, oh, yeah, this is great. Richard Smallwood, I'm also gonna say, trust me. Um, Not to follow the crowd here, which is ironic because, man, I know earlier you said that everyone's go-to would be Total Praise. Now here we are talking about Trust Me, but
Nah, this one should be a go-to. It's good.
It'll make you cry if you think.
and what?
I
Mm-hmm.
said it'll make you cry if you think about it.
Yeah. That's why I'm trying not to dwell on it too long.
Like I would use this song to teach people like how gospel works. Like they repeat that vamp like a dozen times at the end, and that's not just for the sake of being repetitive. Like it's for the sake of letting the message really hit you. Like if you will only trust me, like they say the words "trust me" like so many times. Like, but that's how the genre works. That's how the ministry of it works. Like it's repeated to really get it into your spirit. Like it's a I would point to that for anything.
It
Yes,
hit
yes.
me. It hit me at I'll never leave you. That part.
Mm-hmm.
That part. It hits you. It hits you.
There are so many times in gospel where you say a phrase over and over again, or you hear a phrase over and over again, and at some point you're like, "Why am I crying right now?"
Right.
Like you hear it once, you go, "Okay, all right, I will trust you if you will only trust me." All right, got it, God. And then you keep saying it, and you're like, Oh gosh. Oh
Oh,
gosh.
like you want me to
I'm
get
so
the word,
sorry.
okay.
Oh gosh, yeah. So yeah. And then Dr. Maddie Moss Clark, truth be told, she's another artist who I'm not that deep into her body of work. So I'll probably say, what was the song that you chose, Manny? What was it?
Expect a miracle.
Expect a Miracle. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll probably say that just because if our old church did it long ago, then I've heard it, even though I'd have to hear it again to remember how it goes. But I've heard it. I know I've heard it if our church did it. So
Hmm.
I'll say that one for her. I'll say that for now, and then it'll probably change later. But yeah. So that's that. I think that'll probably wrap it up today, guys.
This was good, man. I definitely want to touch other genres. Even outside of gospel, what led other people who was in gospel or started in the church, what led them to sing another, genre like Tony Braxton, for instance, or Aretha Franklin. She started in the church
Yep.
and then,
Hmm.
made her way to mainstream.
Yeah.
Um, so.
We can definitely talk about that. I'm excited to see where this goes. Um, I'm excited to see what all we'll talk about. We'll definitely keep talking about other topics to cover. There are a lot of ideas that I have that I want to run by you guys, and to anybody watching or listening, if there are any topics that you'd like us to discuss, then by all means, please share that. And we'll take a look at that. Any last words? I think we've said quite a few, quite just many last words, but any final last words before we log off?
Go listen to some gospel. It'll change your life.
Yes. Listen to it, read it, spread it. Ooh, maybe that'll be our tagline. Listen to it, listen to the gospel, read the gospel, spread the gospel.
Let me think of a way to shorten that, but I think we're onto something.
Listen to it, read it, spread it. Listen, read, spread. Something. There's something there.
We'll figure it
Um,
out. Yeah.
we'll figure it out. We'll get with our marketing department. We've got all of these incredible
Well,
departments.
we can't say spread like, in this time of day, because, COVID is around and, you know, spread is
Yeah.
something, they think like, oh, okay, we spreading.
Wanted to spread the gospel, accidentally spread something else. Oh gosh. Oh gosh. Too soon, I guess.
And now Fred Hammond's estate is calling us like, hey, get my name off of this.
I'm sorry, Fred. I'm sorry. We didn't mean to involve you in this.
I thought we came out of this.
Well, that is episode one of the Gospel Podcast, of the Gospel Disciples podcast. So thank you so much for tuning in, and until next time, be blessed. God bless you. We love you, and thank you kindly.
Peace. All right, we did it.
We did it. Hey, look at us. Look at God. Look at God.
Yeah.
Cool.